New Year's Week, 2019. Tokyo wakes up to breaking news. TV anchors are all reporting the same story. Former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn is gone. Everyone in Japan kept replaying his arrest clips, showing maps of his suspected getaway routes, and asking how Japan lost its most famous defendant under extreme surveillance after only 10 months. Just a few days back, Carlos Ghosn was sitting in a small Tokyo house awaiting trial, cameras watching the front door, reporters waiting on the sidewalk. He leaves the house only with the authorities' permission. He uses one lawyer-approved computer with no internet outside legal work. He can't meet his wife, and his passports sit with his lawyers. Ghosn looks at the stakes. If he stays and loses, he could spend decades in prison. If he runs and fails, he'd get more time in prison and lose everything. If he runs and doesn't get caught, he gets his life back, and Japan faces a public embarrassment like no other. He watches the news talk about him and his ruined reputation. For Japan, Ghosn was already guilty. After months, he'd had enough. He decides to take matters into his own hands. He weighs his options, and an escape plan starts to form. Who planned the escape, and how did it unfold? How did he outsmart Japan's extreme security systems? And was it a one-man show, or was someone plotting along behind the scenes? This is the story of the escape that humiliated Japan. Before the arrest and scandal, there was the empire. Paris, 1978. A young trainee named Carlos Ghosn walks into Michelin and starts climbing the corporate ladder. Born in Brazil to Lebanese parents, Carlos Ghosn grew up in Beirut and Rio. He studied at École Polytechnique and École des Mines in Paris and showed great potential as a promising businessman. Ghosn impressed all of his superiors at Michelin. He was efficient, smart, and resourceful. His rise to the top did not take long. By 1985, the company ships him to South America as COO, where the business units under his responsibility represented 40% of Michelin's global revenues. Fast forward 4 years, he's in the US, taking over as CEO of Michelin North America after a tough restructuring that puts the operation back on track. He builds a reputation for himself as a tough businessman who gets the job done and isn't afraid to make difficult decisions. In 1996, he moves to Renault South America, draws up a 20 billion franc cost-cutting plan, and earns a new nickname, Le Cost Killer. Then comes 1999. Ghosn jumps to Nissan as chief operating officer, and within a year pulls the company out of bankruptcy. He cuts debt, reshapes product, drops unprofitable lines, and pushes suppliers harder. In 2000, he takes the wheel as Nissan's CEO. In Japan, where foreign bosses are rare, he becomes a national celebrity. 4 years after that, he became Renault's CEO as well, becoming the first person to run 2 global car makers at the same time. And in 2016, he ties the whole thing together, building the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance, another move that proves his image as the guy who could fix and revive almost any company. But everything came crashing down. On November 19, 2018, prosecutors arrested him the moment his jet landed in Tokyo. They accuse him of underreporting tens of millions and of using company funds for personal perks. Ghosn denied the allegations and insisted he was the victim of a boardroom coup. Japanese Nissan insiders striking first to stop the merger of the companies Ghosn was pushing for. He said that they were afraid that the alliance he created might shift power to Paris and cause them to lose control of the company. The Japanese legal system was tough and rarely granted bail. Ghosn spent 108 days in jail with his lawyers doing everything they can to get him released while awaiting trial. In March 2019, he finally steps out of detention on a 1 billion yen bail, disguised in a workman's cap and mask to dodge cameras, and moves into a small rented house in Tokyo to be put on house arrest. House arrest wasn't just stay home. The rules hit hard, and he surrenders his passports. A camera points at his front door. He cannot contact anyone tied to the case. He cannot use the internet at home. If he needs a computer, he must sit at his lawyer's office and log every session on a court-approved PC with no email and no messaging. Every call and visit goes in a log. He can leave only for court and legal meetings, and he must report his movements. Weeks later, prosecutors rearrest him on new breach of trust allegations. He returns to detention, then posts a second bail in April 2019 with even tighter terms. The court bans contact with his wife. He can't speak to key Nissan figures. He can't speak to potential witnesses. He can't plan anything beyond court dates. Ghosn watches his allies distance themselves and watches headlines already portraying him as guilty. So the idea of escaping starts to take hold. Ghosn's reasoning went like this. Japan's conviction rate is 99%. Prosecutors can interrogate without a lawyer present. Bail can be revoked for almost anything. He didn't believe he'd get a fair trial. In his mind, staying means losing the battle. That was enough for Carlos to start planning. He builds a team with 3 pieces. First, a logistics brain, someone who can stitch a path from Osaka to Beirut. The second piece, on-the-ground scouts, quiet watchers who map every camera around his house, find blind spots, learn the rhythm of patrol cars, and find an opening to slip undetected. The third piece in the puzzle, a cover story big enough to hide a person in plain sight, a music equipment box that rolls past security without raising suspicions. For a while, the team prepares for their mission, checking and rehearsing every detail while Carlos waits patiently. By late December, the plan feels like muscle memory. The team is ready, and the mission is a go. But planning an escape requires a lot of note-taking and team meetings. Carlos used a really powerful tool, the notepin by Plod. Just kidding. Well, not really. I hate meetings, especially when I have to take notes. But there's one gadget that solves this for me, and that's the notepin by Plod. This beautiful tech gadget works as my 24/7 note-taker. It's the best AI meeting secretary for entrepreneurs, creators, and managers out there. All you have to do is attach it to your shirt and press a button. The notepin will take notes of everything, basically anything you hear and say. It will accurately transcribe what's being said with the right speaker labels. But no one wants to go through a transcript of an hour-long meeting. That's why the notepin summarizes the transcripts into action items with the most important takeaways, all without you lifting a finger. Everything is managed by Plod's easy-to-use app. If you want to go back to an idea from a couple of weeks ago, just ask Plod, and the notepin will show it to you on screen. You don't have to worry about your data with Plod's end-to-end encryption, which meets Plod's top privacy global standards. If you're a high-performing individual or working on becoming one, the notepin by Plod is the note companion you need. Get your notepin now by clicking the first link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Thank you, Plod, for sponsoring this video. Tokyo, afternoon into early evening. Ghosn leaves the house in plain clothes, a cap, mask, and a dark coat. He doesn't run. He simply walks away calmly and blends into the street traffic. He stops a taxi and heads to Shinagawa Station. The cameras later showed 2 men waiting for him there. All 3 board a bullet train to Osaka. The 2 men were Americans, Michael Taylor and his son, Peter, who Ghosn hired to help him escape. At 8 p.m., Ghosn arrives at a business hotel booked under a low-profile name. In the room, he changes into simple travel clothes and waits. Downstairs, the same 2 men arrive dressed like a small sound crew, pushing huge instrument cases and coiled cables. They don't stop at the front desk. They ride the elevator and beeline straight to Carlos's room. At 10 p.m., the cameras show the sound crew exiting the hotel, pushing what seemed to be a heavy audio equipment case. What they didn't show was Carlos Ghosn stashed inside. The team heads for Kansai's private jet area, where the most sensitive part of the plan will take place. The debate inside the plan was always inspection and the risk of Carlos being exposed while the case is processed. The Kansai airport was chosen because of its lenient procedures at the time. Private terminals can be tolerant about oversized gear, depending on the facility and the operator. Luggage for private jets wasn't routinely X-rayed, and oversized cases that couldn't fit the scanners often weren't open for visual checks. The team had scouted multiple airports for exactly this gap. They bet on a procedural gray zone. An operator will check the papers, trust the handler, and move it along. And that's exactly what happened. The big case hiding Carlos Ghosn rolls past, sealed and labeled as gear. At 10:30 p.m., the crew load the case into a Bombardier business jet. At 11:10 p.m., the jet departs for Istanbul's Ataturk airport. Ghosn described those 30 minutes as probably the longest wait he's ever experienced in his life. In Turkey, the team switches planes and crews to break any pattern. From Turkey, Ghosn flies on to Lebanon on a second private jet. In Tokyo, a routine check on Ghosn quickly turned into national news. He isn't at the door. The exterior camera shows nothing odd. Airports are quickly alerted, but no record shows an exit stamp. The most watched defendant in Japan leaves without touching a checkpoint. But by the time cameras crowded his old Tokyo building, he was already in Beirut. He lands in Beirut before sunrise. The plane door opens. A car is waiting for him. For the first time in months, there are no cameras at his door, only cameras for him, waiting for a statement. He left the tightest surveillance in Japan without a single trail behind. The operation sounds more like an action movie than a real-life event. Yet Carlos Ghosn pulled it off in 4 moves across 2 continents, and with a genius cover-up that nobody suspected. 2020 New Year's Eve, Japan. The shock is immediate.
The ousted chairman of Nissan has fled Japan,
where he was awaiting trial for financial crimes.
Carlos Ghosn has fled house arrest
in Tokyo.
How did a bail system designed to be suffocating let Japan's most famous defendant just leave? The news was embarrassing. Japanese officials called the escape a cowardly act that insulted the Japanese judicial system. The prosecutors revoked Ghosn's $14 million bail and issued international warrants for his arrest. But despite these warrants, the Lebanese government refused to send him back. Japan and Lebanon have no extradition treaty, and as long as Ghosn holds a Lebanese citizenship, there was no way he would be sent back to Japan. At the same time, Japan tightens the security measures. Airport and bail policies get tougher, and politicians demand reviews. Ghosn's escape changed security measures for private terminals globally. Courtesy shown for VIP passengers can sometimes backfire and cause international scandals. From Beirut, Ghosn goes on the offensive and starts giving his side of the story. His location gives him leverage.
When was the moment that you really understood Nissan and the establishment had turned against you?
Well, it took 24 hours for me to realize that, because I was arrested on November 19, 2018. Frankly, I was shocked by the motive of the arrest. And the first thing I asked is make sure that Nissan knows about it, if they can send me a lawyer. And the second day from this, I received a visit from the French ambassador. And the French ambassador told me, Nissan turning against you. And this is where I realized the whole thing was a plot.
Michael and Peter Taylor have since been handed over by the US to Japan and now face 3 years in prison for helping Ghosn escape. Ghosn frames his escape as a fight against what he calls hostage justice: long pre-trial detention, pressure to confess, restricted defense rights. He tells the world he fled not from justice, but from injustice. He had to humiliate the Japanese judicial system that failed him to find real justice. This was another escape for the books, the kind you would expect from a Hollywood production. Only this time it wasn't scripted. It was real life. Subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.